Good afternoon, everyone. This is Steve Lookner with Right Side Broadcasting coming to you today with a news alert. There have been allegations made today in the Washington Post that Judge Roy Moore, the Republican Senate candidate from Alabama, had sexual misconduct involving several teenage girls. One of the accusations is that he actually had a dating sort of relationship, or at least several interactions with a 14-year-old girl that involved things like them at his house, him in his underwear, him touching certain parts of her, and her trying to get him to her to touch him. We'll go into the specifics in a moment, but there's that one kind of series of interactions with this 14-year-old girl, and there are also, I believe, there are several, I think the number is 16 women that claim that when they were teenage, 16 to 18, I think the number is. We'll get the exact detail in a moment. But 16 to 18 or 16 to 19, and Roy Moore was in his early 30s. These women say that he asked them out, and in one case, one of them went on a couple dates with him, and there was a little kissing, supposedly. So we'll get you the exact details of this in a moment in terms of all of this. We'll get into the specifics of the allegations. Roy Moore has denied the allegations forcefully today. We'll talk about that. And some Republicans have said about this that if this is true, Roy Moore should pull out of the race. I haven't heard any Republicans say yet he should pull out of the race now. I've heard Republicans say if this is true, he should pull out of the race, but Roy Moore denies it. So we're going to talk about that as well. So we're going to go over all of this stuff today, and we're also going to get your comments. So if during the broadcast you have any comments on this, write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, and I will be reading your comments on the air. Just keep them clean, please, but I will read your comments on the air. Let me just make sure you can hear me okay. The race. Sounds like you can hear me okay. Wonderful. Okay, so I think the best way to start here is to start with the Washington Post story that came out today, and this really broke this news. So let's get the details of the Washington Post story before doing anything else here. So here is the Washington Post story that came out today. Headline says, woman says Roy Moore initiated sexual encounter when she was 14. He was 32. So I'm not gonna literally read the entire article, but let me just try to go to the parts of the article that are most relevant to getting a summary of what's going on. So there's this woman, Lee Korfman, and this is a picture of her when she was around 14 there, on the left there. And she says when she was 14 years old. By the way, I'm going to point out, but later in the article, Lee Korfman did tell this to friends of hers, and friends of hers have said, yeah, I remember her telling me this happened in the past. But we'll talk about that. Anyways, but Roy Moore denies this happened. So let's talk about these allegations. Lee Korfman says she was 14 years old when an older man approached her outside the courtroom in Etowah County. Moore comes up to her. He struck up a conversation. He offered to watch the girl while her mother went inside. The mother thought, how nice for him to want to take care of my little girl. Keep going here. Alone with Korfman, according to Korfman, when she was this is according to Korfman now, and she's saying this happened when she was 14. Moore chatted with her and asked for her phone number. And at the time, again, he was, I think, 32. Days later, she says he picked her up around the corner from her house in Gadsden, drove her about 30 minutes to his home in the woods, told her how pretty she was, and kissed her. On a second visit, she says, he took off her shirt and pants and removed his clothes. He touched her over her bra and underpants, she says, and guided her hand to touch him over his underwear. I wanted it over with. I want it out, she remembers thinking. Please just get this over with. Korfman says she asked Moore to take her home. So that's the 14-year-old girl talked about in this headline is Lee Korfman, and she now claims that when she was 14 and Roy Moore was 32, he initiated conversation with her, asked for her number, and a couple times took her to his house. On the first time, she says he kissed her, and on the second time, he said, let me just read this again. This is the sort of the biggest accusation, that on the second visit there, she says he took off her shirt and pants and removed his clothes. He touched her over her bra and her underpants, she says, and guided her hand to touch him over his underwear. So that's one of the accusations, and that's like the most the biggest one. As I said before, there's also this allegation that several women say that he asked them out when he. So here's the other allegation. Aside from Korfman, 3 other women interviewed by the Washington Post in recent weeks say Moore pursued them when they were between the ages of 16 and 18, and he was in his early 30s. Episodes they said they found flattering at the time, but troubling as they got older. None of the women say that Moore forced them into any sort of relationship or sexual contact. And also, and let's see, one of them, the first girl, was 16 when he asked her on dates, according to the woman. Debbie Wesson Gibson says she was 17 when Moore spoke to her high school civics class and asked her out. Thacker Deason says she was an 18-year-old cheerleader when Moore began taking her on dates and gave her wine. The legal drinking age in Alabama was 19. Of the 4 women, the youngest at the time was that 14-year-old we talked about, Korfman, who was the only one who says she had sexual conduct with Moore that went beyond kissing. She says they did not have intercourse. In a written statement, Moore denied the allegations. Judge Roy Moore said today, I believe this was today, these allegations are completely false and are a desperate political attack by the National Democrat Party and the Washington Post on this campaign, Moore said. The campaign said in a subsequent statement that if the allegations were true, they would have surfaced during one of his previous campaigns, adding, this garbage is the very definition of fake news. So, let's just, again, sum up. Let's sum up these allegations. The woman on the left here is Lee Korfman. She's the big picture. She says that when she was 14, Roy Moore got her number, went out with her a couple times, took her to his house twice. The first time they hung out and he kissed her. The second time they hung out and he touched her. Again, I want to get this exactly right. She says he told her on a second visit, he took off her shirt and pants and removed his clothes. He touched her over her bra and underpants, she says, and guided her hand to touch him over his underwear. And so that's girl number 1. And then the other 3 women pictured on the right there, those 3 women are all women who say that Roy Moore pursued them when they were between the ages of 16 and 18, and he was in his early 30s. Only one of the women says they ever had any kind of like sexual contact, and that sexual contact and that contact was just kissing. So that's some of the accusations in a nutshell. So there's that, and again, Roy Moore's campaign and Roy Moore deny this. They said this is not true. So that is that. That's that part. And we're going to get to your comments in a second. So if you have comments on any of this, give me a shout on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. I want to thank, during this stream, the moderators for moderating the chat room. We have in the YouTube chat room, JC, Barbara, Braille, who else is there? Jude is there, Real Frank. So thank you for moderating. And also on the website, we have Glenn O and Common Sense. All right, so we've talked about what these accusations are. I'm going to get to your comments in a second, but before we talk about before we get to your comments, I want to talk about a couple other things briefly here. One thing I want to talk about is the reaction from Republicans to this today. So here is an article from Politico which came out today, and it says Mitch McConnell calls on Moore to step aside if report on allegations with teenagers is true. So this says Mitch McConnell said today, if these allegations are true, he must step aside. Now, Sam Stein actually posted a tweet which I think is helpful here, where he said this. Sam Stein says, short of Moore confessing to these allegations, it looks like most of the Senate GOP will stand by him. Now, if you look at the Mitch McConnell quote, Mitch McConnell said, if these allegations are true, he should resign. The thing is, Mitch McConnell's not going to go conduct an investigation by himself to find out if these are true. I don't know if there's any real way of confirming whether these allegations are true or not, certainly not 100%, but I mean, at a certain point, what we have now is a he said, she said, where she says, Lee Korfman, this happened. Roy Moore says it didn't happen. We don't know, for sure if it happened, and it's hard to ascertain exactly what happened. So when Mitch McConnell says if these allegations are true, he must step aside, there's probably not much that can be done in the next month. I think the election is December 12th in Alabama. There's probably not much that can be done before December 12th to convince somebody like Mitch McConnell these allegations are true if he doesn't believe they are true definitely already. I mean, what's going to happen? Now, I guess what could happen is if a number of other women all of a sudden came out and told similar stories, maybe that might convince Mitch McConnell it's true. But for right now, I mean, unless we have some kind of deeper evidence or confirmation, I'm not saying it's true or not true. All I'm saying is if you have Republicans like Mitch McConnell saying today, well, if it's true, he should resign. He should, if it's true, not he should resign, Roy Moore should pull out from the election. Well, it sounds like, as Sam Stein says, they're not calling for him to pull out of the election right now. They're saying, well, we don't know if this is true, and I would need to know more to be convinced it was true. So at least it sounds like Mitch McConnell is expressing his approval of this type of behavior when it happens with anyone, but not saying right now that Roy Moore should step aside. Let me just read a little bit more from this article from Politico. Other Republican senators also reacted with alarm to the report by the Washington Post. It quoted several, we talked about the report already. Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado says the allegations against Roy Moore are deeply troubling. If these allegations are found to be true, we have that phrase again, if these allegations are found to be true, Roy Moore must drop out. Oh, and Senator Lisa Murkowski says, if this is true, I'm horrified, and if this is true, he needs to step down immediately. Richard Shelby says, it's a nasty story. I don't know anything about it. Let's see how the story runs. So, you can see a number of senators are saying, well, if this is true, he should definitely step aside from the race. But at this point, like I just explained, the senators who are saying this are certainly, they don't seem to be convinced it's true, to the point where they're saying if it's true, and I'm not really sure, short of like a videotape coming out, even though it's happened a long time ago. I mean, it would be hard to have videotape back then. But if you had again, the thing I could think of is if a number of other women came out and told similar stories, maybe that would be enough. But for now, it doesn't seem like these Republican senators are going to are going to forcefully call for Roy Moore to step aside. And you might be wondering, well, let's just play the hypothetical game. Suppose the Republicans in Alabama wanted to replace Roy Moore. Could they even replace Roy Moore on the ballot? They couldn't replace him on the ballot, according to the Daily Beast. The Daily Beast has this article, and here's if you want to look it up. They say GOP senators run away from accused child molester Roy Moore. Daily Beast is kind of liberal, I believe. So, take the headline for what you will. But at the same time, I want to show you this quote they have about whether Roy Moore. So here's a paragraph. But it's not actually clear that Roy Moore could withdraw from the race or that Republicans could install someone in his place. Technically, he could say he will not serve if elected, likely leaving it to the governor to appoint a replacement senator if he were to win. So that's one option. But there is no formal mechanism for his name to be removed from the ballot since, as the Secretary of State's office noted, absentee ballots have already gone out with Moore's name on them. And then a spokesman for the Secretary of State's office in Alabama said he could withdraw, or the party could withdraw their nomination. He would be on the ballot regardless. But if the nomination was withdrawn, the board would not certify results. So there's that. But there's also this, where's the write-in candidate thing? Another Republican candidate could run against Moore as a write-in, which is allowed under state law. And so I guess it's now Lisa Murkowski, who won a write-in campaign itself, was urging her fellow party members to take that route. So Lisa Murkowski from Alaska is saying that they should have a write-in candidate instead of Roy Moore. But we saw a number of other senators here. Does Lisa Murkowski say anything in the Politico article? I don't see her quote in the Politico article. I just see, I see Cory Gardner. Oh, Lisa Murkowski. But Lisa Murkowski in this article actually said if he was true, he needs to step down immediately. So I don't know if the Daily Beast got that quote from Lisa Murkowski right, because in Politico article, it seems to say that Lisa Murkowski isn't right now saying that Roy Moore should pull aside and step out of the race. Anyways, so that's what we have. We have these allegations against Roy Moore today. Just again, to repeat one more time, we have one woman saying that when she was 14, Roy Moore took her to his house a couple times, and one time they kissed, and another time he took off her shirt and pants and touched, and what does it say? Touched her over her bra and underpants and guided her hand to touch him over his underwear. And then three other women claim that between the ages of 16 and 18, he pursued them. But only one says they ever actually did anything sexually, and that was just kissing. And he was in his early 30s at the time, say the allegations. But the Roy Moore and the Roy Moore campaign forcefully deny these allegations. Okay, so that's a summary of the allegations, a summary of what Roy Moore says. Really want to hear what you think about this. So what do you think of these allegations? Do you think Roy Moore should pull out of the race or not? Do you think, now a key question here which we haven't talked about is, it doesn't look like Roy Moore is pulling out of the race. I would say the most likely scenario is that he doesn't pull out of the race and the Republicans don't insist he pull out. So if that happens, how much do you think this will hurt Roy Moore? So he is running against a Democrat. There have been differing views on how this race might go. I mean, traditionally, Alabama is a Republican state, but some have thought, well, Roy Moore is pretty conservative, and then, maybe there's some backlash against Trump, and so that might give Doug Jones a chance. I'm just saying what some pundits have said about this. So there's some questions about how close this race might be, and does Doug Jones have a chance? How much does something like this, do you think, hurt Roy Moore in the election, which is December 12th, I think? If it's not December 12th, it's around there. I should look this up and make sure. But how much do you think this hurts Roy Moore, or do you think this doesn't hurt him at all? Do you think some people on the right might see this as like a left attack? Will some people on the right say this is the Washington Post and people trying to bring Roy Moore down? And could it motivate Roy Moore's base of supporters and think he's getting attacked and we're going to get out there and support him? Let me just look up the date of that election. The date is December 12th. Okay, that's an election to fill Jeff Sessions' seat in Alabama. So what do you think about this? I want to hear from you. Write to me at Lookner on Twitter, Let me know what you think. Also, if you enjoy our broadcast here, if you enjoy that we're covering this and giving it some time, and we're not yelling and screaming about it, and you have an alternative to the mainstream media to go for news about this, please consider making a donation to Right Side Broadcasting, because we are viewer supported. Your donations are what keeps us on the air. So if you like our broadcasts and you want to support us, and you want to allow us to do more news for you, you can donate by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat, and you can click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat. There's a little $ there. Or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. And if you want to know when we're coming on the air with these breaking news videos, subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell. All right, I want to get to your comments here. Jasmine Ruiz says, this has to be false. Why is it coming out now, a month before the election? They tried to do the same thing to Donald Trump. So you're saying, wouldn't this have come out before if this was true? Roy Moore said the same thing. Now there's a response to this, I believe, from Lee Corfman in this article, and I'll get to it in a second. But first, I want to say thank you. Miss Rob Mob just donated $12. Thank you, Miss Rob Mob. We really appreciate it. Miss Rob Mob says, wow, all this darkness is coming to light. Good job, Steve, RSBN, and moderators. If Roy Moore did this and there is proof and a history of this, then he should step down. So that's what Miss Rob Mob is saying. But she seems to be saying also that there would have to be more evidence for her to be convinced this is definitely true. Now, let me show you, there was this message from Jasmine Ruiz where she said, why is this coming out now? Now, I want to show you what's in this article about this. Give me a second. Let me pull this up here. I believe it's toward the end. There's a little comment about it coming out now. It's an important point, and I'm glad you asked about it. It's kind of a long article, so I just need to find it. Okay, I'm looking. Hold on. I'll pull up the article on the screen here. Here we go. Korfman is 53. She works as a customer service representative at a payday loan business. She says she has voted for Republicans in the past 3 elections, including for Donald Trump in 2016. She says she thought of confronting Moore personally for years and almost came forward publicly during his first campaign for state Supreme Court in 2000, but decided against it. Her 2 children were still in school then, and she worried about how it would affect them. She was also concerned that her background, 3 divorces and a messy financial history, might undermine her credibility. There is no one here that doesn't know I'm not an angel, she says. So she says she didn't come out with this earlier, first because she was worried it might affect her kids if she came out with this accusation when their kids heard this on the news or whatever. And she also said she was concerned that her background might undermine her credibility. That's her explanation why she didn't come out with this sooner. Maybe you believe that or not, but that's what she says. As for the other women, I don't recall off the top of my head. Actually, I think it says something in here about them, why they say they didn't come out sooner. Let me just find that bit for you, because I think that's an important point too. If I can find it relatively fast. I might not be able to find it, guys, right now. So let me just look one more time. I don't want you to stare at me for 20 minutes while I look over a long article trying to find this. So. Yeah, so I can't find that. It's in the article somewhere. If you want to see, I believe in this article somewhere, the women who've talked about it now, they might have said something about why they didn't talk about it earlier. I'm not even sure about that, though. But I gave you the explanation from the article from Lee Korfman as to why she said she didn't talk about it earlier. Okay, let's get to some more of your messages. And by the way, let me just check one thing here before I get to some more of your messages. Is there, I was told one of our viewers, Chris Douglas, said he had heard about a story about sexual allegations about Louis C.K. Here it is. So actually, we'll do a separate stream on this. I just saw this right now. I've been busy getting on the air for this. So this happened. There's this Louis C.K. post from the New York Times. So let's focus on Roy Moore now, and then after this, a little while after this, we're going to do another stream on the Louis C.K. story. So thank you to Chris Douglas for letting me know about this. The thing I want to do first, though, is I want to just make sure I retweet this so people know I'm paying attention. Let me just give me 1 second here. Here we go. And so we will have a stream about the Louis C.K. accusation story a little later today. So let's talk about Roy Moore first. We'll keep the focus on Roy Moore now, but thank you, Chris Douglas, for writing in about that. Okay, let's get back to your comments about Roy Moore. Patriot of Truth says, it's written that he is accused. Is it really true that this happened? Well, Patriot of Truth, these women say this did happen. He says it doesn't happen. So it's really, up to you guys to decide what to think about it. P. Tudsbury says, these false allegations are nothing more than the deep state globalist leftist accusing a fine man of what they themselves do or did. Now, you might be referring to the Washington Post as a left-wing paper and others. This woman, Lee Korfman, who made the big accusation, the biggest of the accusations today. I don't want to minimize any of them, but the one which is probably the biggest accusation. She says she's a Republican and she voted for President Trump. Now, somebody might say, well, can we confirm that? No, but I mean, we can't go back and get her vote. But she claims she's a Republican. But you think, Pete Tudsbury, that these accusations... Now, you might say, well, this is the Washington Post digging this up. I leave it to you to decide how to think about that stuff. But thank you, Pete Husbury, for writing in. Chris Douglas says, thank you. Chris gave a donation of $2. Said, thanks, Steve, for covering Louis C.K. Yeah, and it's been actually kind of busy here today because we've been making some adjustments to the studio here in Atlanta, a couple improvements here. So there were people doing construction work here, very minor construction work in the studio today. So I was dealing with that and didn't even see the Louis C.K. story until Chris told me about it a few minutes ago. So thank you. So we'll do a stream about that a little later on. Let me get to more of your messages here about this story about Roy Moore. Micah Messer, who's worked with RSBN before, and we always like to hear Micah's opinion on things. Micah says, I do not personally know Roy Moore, but I do know he has stood up to a lot of crap in the past over his personal and moral views. The timing of these allegations is intentional. It's important to remember that it is only allegations. Unless I see facts proving he did indeed do this, then I will still be voting for Roy Moore. Thanks, Micah, for writing in. And I think an important thing to recognize here is, it's if the story were just the three women saying, well, when we were between the ages of 16 and 18, Roy Moore asked us out or something, and then one of us kissed him. I don't know if that would be such a big story today. I think what makes this the bigger story today is the one woman who says she was 14 and that, Roy Moore had her over and he took off some of her clothes and he touched her over her bra and her underwear and he had her touch him over his underpants. So that's that one big accusation, right now, just as a state of what this is. And, so I guess in terms of that one, whether you believe it just depends on whether you believe this woman or whether you believe Roy Moore. Let's see here. Chaz Pacan writes in, Steve, one accusation in 40 years. He is a public figure over 10 commandments in Alabama courthouse. The left had plenty of chances to dig something up. I give Judge Moore the benefit of the doubt. This seems like a smear. Maybe the GOP swamp has something to do with the smear. Thanks for writing in, Chaz. Ernie Hurd gave $10. Thank you, Ernie. Ernie says, in honor of Steve and RSBN Mod Squad. Yes, thank you to all the moderators moderating our chat today and every day on YouTube and on the website. To repeat, we are viewer supported, so we really appreciate your donations because those keep us on the air. If you want to support Right Side Broadcasting, help us stay on the air to do more broadcasts, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Right now, we are taking your comments about the Roy Moore story. If you have comments, you want me to read them on the air, write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Also, you can follow me there. If you like breaking news, I post about breaking news all the time. You can follow Right Side Broadcasting on Twitter at RSB Network. And by the way, if you enjoyed the video, we love when you share the videos on Facebook and like them on YouTube. That really helps let people know about Right Side Broadcasting. Okay, let's get that picture off. Let's get me on. I want to read some more of your messages here. Actually, let's get the headline up. Let's get back to some more of your messages. Noreen Sanderson writes in, almost 40 years ago, liberals seem to this was almost 40 years ago. Liberals seem to celebrate sexual predators, so why do they even care if true? They also sought out phony sexual accusations against President Trump, allegations against President Trump. Typical and predictable, I need hard facts. I stand with Trump says, if Moore was 30 years old, or I guess it's in his early 30s, you say 30, I think this was when he was 32, they're saying, or these allegations are about when he was early 30s. If he was that old when this supposedly happened, then why didn't her family, relatives, or even the state pursue charges back then? So she says she waited until her kids grew up then? I would think she would have done something back then to prove to her family she is a strong woman, and hiding what supposedly happened only make what she is claiming sound more false than. Hiding what supposedly happened only makes what she's claiming sound more false now than real if she would have spoken up back then. Doing a great job, Steve. Thanks for writing in. I stand with Trump. Now, she says, this woman, Lee Corfman says, that she only told her mom. There's a part in here where she talks about telling her mom. Yeah, on a visit home in the mid-1990s, So that would have been, I have to do my math. In the mid 1990s, that's when she told her mother. So supposedly, this happened around 1979. So she would have told her mother about 15, 16 years after this happened. I guess when she was around 30 years old. Anyways, let's get back up to the top there. Oops. I will say Drudge is featuring this prominently today. On the Drudge report, it's the top story there. Let's see here. Pete Husbury says, I'm the lady who wrote before with I stand with Trump. And okay. You have two accounts. You're writing me on two accounts, Pete Husbury. She says, one of the women claiming to be a Republican, one of the women is claiming to be a Republican. I'll guess that if investigated, something is fishy with all of them. The 14-year-old sounds more like a dream than what someone would do. That's from Pete Husbury. Mark Cunningham says the GOP never Trump establishment is even more predictable. Trump has exposed them all. Question is, will Joe Blow help drain the swamp? Linda Belk says the timing of these allegations are very suspicious. I'd be wanting to know why all of a sudden a gaggle of women just happen to recall this stuff happening, especially since they've been silent all these years. If true, he should resign, of course. So a couple of you have written in and said, look, if this is true, he should, I think you mean he should pull out of the race. A couple of you have written in, look, if this is true, he should pull out of the race, but you don't seem convinced that this is definitely true based on what we've heard so far. Tina says, sounds like a late hour DNC trick. Bob See Your Uncle says, this is the only way for Democrats to get a foothold in Alabama. They know they can't win a straight up election. Sammy says, this is silly. Establishment mad because Big Luther didn't get in. No one believes this. Great show, Steve. Thanks for writing in, Sammy. And you're referring to Luther Strange, who was defeated by Roy Moore in the Republican primary about a month ago. Isaac Barry says the news sounds like a Democratic setup. CJ says, hope Roy Moore stays in the race. Just another story made up by Democrats. If I were Moore, I would want the person who made the accusation to take a lie detector test. Thank you. Nazrin the opera singer gave $5. Thank you so much, Nazrin. Very much appreciate it. American Patriot says, Roy Moore step aside. Even if he is guilty of the accusation, it isn't nearly as bad as the crimes Clinton had committed, and she didn't step down and she didn't step down from the presidential race. Deplorable Me says the Roy Moore supposed sexual harassment thing, it's total BS and they know it. In fact, I'd tear a page from President Trump's playbook. Tell every one of them he'll sue. American Patriot says, great timing from the left for these paid-for accusations. They are obviously trying to take him down. Tired of this. Peace Through Strength says, it's easy to find a random person willing to take a bribe and screaming an allegation about something over 30 years ago, and newspapers are just publishing this as if it were all proven and factual. It can be true, but who has the real scandalous behavior here? American Patriot says, my first instinct is that it's the left paying for these witnesses to accuse a Republican of sexual misconduct to get them out of office. Here we go again, sighs. Liz Eckel says, it's either sexual conduct or racism when someone wants a Republican to step aside. Proud American says it's a smear campaign by McConnell in the deep state. Stephen Gato says, how convenient Mitch is such a devious anti-American turtle turd. So though some of you, I think, are claiming because McConnell was supported Luther Strange, that maybe he has a hand in this. I haven't heard any evidence that he has a hand in these allegations. Vika Varkosh says, the allegation supposedly was 30 years ago. Why are you posting it as if it's a current event and post these stupid looking pictures? Shame on you. Well, all I'm posting is the story that just came out today, and it's a current event because, for example, it's the head story on Drudge, and also because a number of senators, including Mitch McConnell, have released statements about it today. So that's why we're talking about it today. Raymond German says, stop the presses. Why are we so quick in believing the accuser? McConnell is a damn fool for making a quick response. He wouldn't like Roy Moore anyway. Vote McConnell and his ilk out. Eric Crocker says, hit peace and everyone knows it. Candidly American says, where's the proof? C writes in, Moore should stay. This is another BS hit story. See if there are any more comments here. Thank you all for writing in. Central Florida for Trump says, wholly predictable. Sadly, some on our side will believe, may be enough. You get the government you deserve. So you're saying, Central Florida for Trump, you think it's possible that some Republicans will believe this and might cause them to either not vote for Roy Moore or to vote for his opponent, who I believe is Doug Jones. Let me look that up and make sure. Yeah, Doug Jones. CJ writes, she supported Trump, who Democrats said he touched women wrongly, but then he comes out against Moore. No, I think what you're saying, yeah, CJ, I think there's a typo there. I think you're saying she supported Trump, who Democrats say touched women wrongly, but then she comes out against Roy Moore. Fake. Roy Moore for U.S. Senate. Garrett, I got your message about an accusation, but it's a YouTube video, and I'm not really sure where that came from. If you find anything in like a newspaper or something, or like a big media organization, give me a shout. Let me know. I'm not saying it's not true, Garrett. It's just saying I usually only show stuff where it's like a little more that I can personally more verify the source. Red-pilled atheist says, well, it's a good thing that President Trump has allowed for purchasing. Well, I'm sorry, that's about the insurance. I posted earlier on my Twitter that my insurance went up 33% starting next year. Same insurance, health insurance. Let's see here. Okay, so thank you all for writing in your comments. I'm going to give this a couple more minutes, see if any of you have any thoughts on this. So we've been covering these allegations about Roy Moore. And, I think a real big question now is, to me, as I said before, the most likely thing is that he doesn't step aside unless somehow some more stuff comes out about this story or similar stories. But there is this question, how much might this affect the election in Alabama? We don't know. Could it be a close election anyway, and this could sway a few votes? Maybe. So don't know. I will say also, though, it's possible that if this had come out, the election's on December 12th. Maybe if this had come out a week before the election, that might be worse for Roy Moore. I can't say, but, just a thought. Ooh, I didn't check my email. Greg Jackson writes in, why should we believe any of this? Republicans are always accused, as in Herman Cain, and afterwards dead silence, and everyone hid. Given all the history of Moore, and this never came up before, these Republicans in the Senate are even worse in their sanctimonious calls for pulling out. Moore is the type not to go along with the establishment. Thanks, Greg. And just to clarify, the Republicans I've seen, none of them have said that he should pull out of the race. They've said if it's true, he should pull out. But none of them are saying he should pull out, which suggests that they're not convinced that it's true yet. I am, writes in, there's no way I believe this story. All GOP and POTUS supporters should call out the DNC for these desperate lies. Again, I'm not aware of any evidence that this came from the DNC, but I leave it to you to decide what you think the origins of this are. Central Florida for Trump says, if this were true, why didn't it come out years ago, and why go to the Washington Post? Desperate Democrats takes off Brazil and takes talk off Brazil and DNC. Now I think the Washington Post said they heard these allegations and then they interviewed people. Let me see if I can find where it says it in this article. Here it is. This is how this story came to be, supposedly. While reporting a story, neither Korfman nor any of the other women sought out the Post. While reporting a story in Alabama about supporters of Moore's Senate campaign, a Post reporter heard that Moore allegedly had sought relationships with teenage girls. Over the ensuing 3 weeks, 2 Post reporters contacted and interviewed the 4 women. All were initially reluctant to speak publicly, but chose to do so after multiple interviews, saying they thought it was important for people to know about their interactions with Moore. The women say they don't know one another. So that's a little explanation of how this story came to be. The Post heard this rumor and sought out these women. And also, this was the part I was looking for before, where it doesn't really say why the 3 women besides Lee Korfman said something now, but it does say why they're talking now. But it doesn't say why the 3 women besides Lee Korfman didn't say anything about it before. That's what it doesn't say. Central Florida for Trump says McCain did call for Roy Moore to step aside. Let me check that and see. On his Twitter, Central Florida for Trump said, oh, how about this? I take it back. John McCain did call for, thank you, Central Florida for Trump. John McCain did call for Roy Moore to step out now. It says, John McCain says Roy Moore should immediately step aside and allow the people of Alabama to elect a candidate they can be proud of. This is a bit weird to me because he's implying that people can't be proud of Roy Moore because Roy Moore was accused of something. But couldn't people in Alabama say, well, I don't believe the allegations? Because this does imply that people can't be proud of Roy Moore. But how can McCain be sure people aren't proud of him if these are just allegations? I mean, now maybe people who believe the allegations aren't proud of him. I'm guessing there are also people in Alabama who don't believe the allegations and are proud of him. So that's a bit funky there. I'm a fan of due process on no matter who's accused of anything. So there seems to be an implication here. It's one thing on its own to say he should step aside. It's another to say they can't be proud of Roy Moore because of allegations. Well, I don't know. I don't like when people say, when it sounds when you say they can't be proud of him. To me, that sounds like something more appropriate to say if somebody's been convicted of something, or there's hard evidence, that basically beyond a reasonable doubt. But I think there are plenty of Alabamans who might say, well, I don't believe this. So interesting. Thank you, Central Florida for Trump, for letting me know about this. Let me get to some more of your comments here. American Patriot says, what do you want to bet that if Luther Strange had won the primary, this story would be about him instead of Roy Moore? That's somebody named Kay's Critters on YouTube that American Patriot quoted there. Bob says this is a look squirrel ploy. Hope it backfires on the liberals. Edie Marie Trump sent me a tweet from Aaron Blake. Wait, I'm confused by this. What is this? Edie Marie Trump wanted me to show you this. Edie Marie Trump wanted me to show you this. It's a post from Aaron Blake, who is with the Washington Post. And he says that the state auditor of Alabama, Jim Ziegler, said, take Joseph and Mary. Mary was a teenager and Joseph was an adult carpenter. They became parents of Jesus. I can't speak to this at all, but I mean, it's Aaron Blake posting, the state auditor said it. I can't confirm the state auditor said it, but Aaron Blake writes for the Washington Post. So, but Edie Marie Trump wanted you guys to see this, so I showed it. Doug Neipel says, I reserve judgment for now, but I've seen too many Republican fallen angels in my time. Larry Craig, LaTourette, Dreer, Sherwood Foley, etc. Garrett writes, and hey, Steve, Fox 9, I think this might be in Minnesota, aired an article about Minnesota State Senator Dan Schoen concerning sexual harassing several women. So if you want to see that, that's at Fox 9, www.fox9.com. Garrett wanted people to know that that story is out there. Okay, let me just, a couple more messages here. So we're going to wrap this up in a minute here, but if you have any messages, get them in now. But thank you for everybody who's been writing in so far. Appreciate all your comments. And one more quick reminder, if you want to know when we're coming on the air with these breaking news videos, we're going to do a Louis C.K. one later today to talk about that story in the New York Times. Subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell so you get notified when we come on the air. JC says, I was sexually assaulted by the doctor who delivered me. Hashtag faced fake news. Not a leftist says, there's been too many fakes for me to believe this. Innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. P. Tudsbury says, Biden fondling little girls in the White House on camera means nothing. Now, I'm not exactly what you're referring to when you say that, P. Tudsbury. Feel free to write it in and clarify. P. Tudsbury also says, and the press wants to make a big deal about uncorroborated allegations about something that might have happened 40 years ago. Trump Jr. says, Menendez is who we can't be proud of. You're talking about Bob Menendez, who is on trial right now. Democratic senator. Just Me says, after all these years, they come out 1 month before the election. This is a Democrat playbook 101. I hope he sues these women. Not a Leftist says, there's been too many fakes for me. Oh, we already read that one. Noreen Sanderson says, this is a Senate seat. Some people want him to resign, or I guess pull out of the election, you mean. What about Presidents Jefferson, Harding, Roosevelt, Eisenhower, JFK, LBJ, Bill Clinton? Were they asked to resign? And those allegations were true. All right, we are going to wrap up this stream now. I am going to come on in a little bit and do a Louis C.K. stream. I think I'll probably do that one not right after this. I'm going to create the event. I think I'll probably do the Louis C.K. stream probably around 7 p.m., maybe a little earlier. So let me, I'm going to get off the air. I'm going to create that event. I'll put it up on our website and we will... And I'll put it on our site, and you'll be able to see where the event is at Right Side Broadcasting. So I'll get on that. I'll probably come back around again 7 p.m. and do the Louis C.K. stream, if not a little earlier. But very much appreciate all of you writing in your comments and all of you watching, of course. Thanks so much to the moderators in the chat room. In the YouTube chat, we had JC and Jude and Real Frank, Barbara Braley. Was that it for today? Maybe we had some others there too. Common Sense and Glen O on the website. And thank you for your donations so much. We are viewer supported, so The reason we can come on the air and do a whole stream on Roy Moore allegations and a whole stream on Louis C.K. allegations and take all your comments is because you donate. So we thank you for your donations. And if you want to support Right Side Broadcasting, keep us on the air as an alternative to the mainstream media, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat room and click on the little $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat. Or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. And there you can even get Right Side freebies like this Right Side mug if you set up a monthly donation. You can find out about that at rsbn.tv/donate. Okay, so thank you for watching. Thank you for everybody for saying thank you. I see some people in the Swoosh says thanks. Thank you, Swoosh. Yeah, the Louis C.K. story is this New York Times story that says Louis C.K. got accused of sexual misconduct by a number of women. So we're gonna talk about that story a little later today. We'll do a stream this evening about it. Thanks. I'll also see some other people saying thanks in the stream. I just want to say thanks for saying thanks. Thanks, Light Switch. Thanks, Mordina. And Sons of Patriarchy. Thank you. Thank you, David Donlin. So, okay, so I'm gonna end the stream right now. Thanks all of you for watching. We will be back probably around 7 Eastern with a update on the live coverage of the Louis C.K. allegations story. But for now, I am Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. Oh, I forgot to say, follow Right Side Broadcasting on Twitter at RSB Network. Follow me on Twitter for breaking news at Lookner. We're on Facebook at Right Side Broadcasting, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Click the notifications bell. Okay, that's it for today. Well, not for today. That's it for this stream. I'll see you in a little bit for the Louis C.K. stream. And if there's other breaking news tonight, we'll cover that too. But for now, I'm Steve Lookner for Right Side Broadcasting. Have a good afternoon, and I will see you in a little bit.